Item number 6, the advertised public hearing and discussion action items. Public comment will be taken on these items, limited to 4 minutes per speaker. Item number 6 is discussion and direction on the downtown train horn quiet zone potential funding sources. Mr. Goebel.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you recall, in February, last time we were here, Council directed staff to provide and identify potential funding sources for establishing our downtown quiet zone. So that's what we're here tonight to inform you about. So just as a reminder, our downtown area train horn quiet zone is established as between 5th Street and 2nd Street. The concepts that seem to have traction at this point is the 4-quad gate system. This is estimated to be about $800,000 to $850,000 and requires FRA review about every 5 years. And in that review, they just make sure that the standard safety measures are still in place and functioning properly. The other option we spoke about last time was potentially doing 4-quad gates at 2nd Street only, and that was about $400,000 to $425,000 and requires an FRA review every 2 to 3 years to make sure that the safety risk is still being met. So funding options available, the sources available, of course, the town. All other funding sources that I'm going to talk about would require further engagement of those sources to work up agreements and whatever might be necessary or apply for those funds. So the town is one resource. The DDA, tax increment finance, so council could direct the DDA to collect downtown increment funds for this project. There's also the potential that the town actually front the funds for the project and then council direct the DDA to pay us back for a portion of that. There's always the Douglas County Partnership, so formally requesting funds or partnership from Douglas County in some form of participation. This would likely include increasing the size of our quiet zone to also incorporate 2 private crossings that are north of the downtown area. There are also a number of available grants, either federal through the Denver Regional Council of Governments through DRCOG, and there are also potentially some funding grants available with the railroad. Typically those are for demonstrated crossings that are significant safety risk, and then they provide upgrades or safety improvements to the crossings that might qualify for quiet zone improvements at that point. And then a special taxing district for that area, which means establishing a property tax whereby the residents would pay back the cost of that. So the town would actually front the funds for that, and then they'd pay us over time. So that district could be established by a 2/3 vote, or I'm sorry, a petition of 2/3 of the voters in that area, in that identified district. So council could decide to use all of these sources of refunds or funding in combination with each other. So this is kind of a pick and choose menu or combination type of menu, if you will. And we can certainly apply for grants and hopefully we can get those. Of the cities that we've contacted that have established quiet zones, all but one funded the quiet zone with their own town funds or city funds. There was one town that did receive a Tiger grant. They were fortunate enough to receive $2.7 million from the federal government for their quiet zone. That was Windsor, Colorado, and they had about 13 crossings, and they received a grant for $2.7 million for those. So those are the resources. Also wanted to mention that Senator Cory Gardner has worked with the Federal Railroad Administration and gotten them to open up the public comment period again for the FRA rules, and staff would be happy to provide some suggested comments for that for council to review if they'd like us to, for sure.
Okay.
So with that kind of concludes our presentation, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council have any questions for Mr. Goebel? Okay, we'll go ahead and open this up to the public. Do have a couple of people signed up for this particular item. First person I have signed up is Bruce Decker. And again, Mr. Decker, if you just state your name for the record, whether you're a resident, you do have 4 minutes.
Great, thank you. My name is Bruce Decker. I live at 203 Cantrell Street here in Craig and Gould. On February 6, 2007, the overview of the train horn rule was first discussed in council. Since then, residents of Castle Rock have been pleading with the town council for a quiet zone in the downtown area. These citizens have rightfully argued that their health, safety, well-being have been affected and have asked in every conceivable way for the town to take action. Almost a decade later, the most we've received from the mayor and the town council are half-hearted gestures and lip service that I fear are designed more to delay and distract than to result in any tangible action. I'm here to add to those voices of those who have come before me with the hope that perhaps one more voice and a few different words may help persuade council. According to the municipal code, each of you were required to take an oath when you entered office. Let me read from section 2.7 of the Castle Rock Municipal Code. Before assuming office, every council member shall take and file with the town clerk or other designated person an oath or affirmation to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Colorado, and the charter and ordinances of the town, and to faithfully perform the duties of office. Each of you are bound by oath to support the ordinances of the town. Now let me read you section 9.16.010 of the Municipal Code. I quote, "The town council finds that A, excessive sound and vibration are a serious hazard to the public health and welfare, safety, and quality of life. B, a substantial body of science and technology exists whereby excessive sound and vibration may be substantially abated. C, the people have a right to and should be ensured an environment free of excessive sound and vibration that may jeopardize their health, welfare, safety, or degrade quality of life. And D, it is the policy of the town to prevent excessive sound and vibration which may jeopardize the health and welfare or safety of its citizens or degrade the quality of life." These are the rights and obligations that the town council itself has declared. These declarations were codified in 1990. You may have been told that the above provisions have exclusions, and they do, but according to our legal counsel, these exclusions can only be applied in a clearly and narrowly defined context as defined in the definitions of code. These exclusions do not excuse the town council of its obligations as enumerated above. So in summary, I have 3 simple points. You took an oath to support the ordinance of the town, irrespective of whether the ordinances are popular or unpopular with your constituents. Upholding the ordinance is not something you're permitted to prioritize below discretionary expenditures like Christmas ornaments, lighting the road, constructing wading pools, or footbridges. I realize that these projects are fun, and they do improve the town, and people like them, but legally mandated expenditures and obligations must come first. By your inaction, you're denying to Castle Rock citizens the right that is defined in the municipal code that you swore to support. I and many other people have been harmed by your inaction, and we demand that you correct this situation now. After almost a decade of playing games, we need you to get to work, not with delay tactics or red herrings, but with genuine actions to fund the quiet zone now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Decker. Next, I have Ann Dorsweiler.
Thank you, Council. Ann Dorsweiler, Castle Rock resident. I am speaking more on reflections of the last meeting when we talked about the quiet zone. So it's a little bit of housekeeping, an apology, some questions, points of clarification, and a little advice. Now, the more I watch council in process or in action, the more I realize how difficult your job is. And so I'll always come to you with respect, but I do listen with a keen ear. Councilman Ford, you mentioned that you didn't like feeling guilted into a decision, and most people would agree that's a terrible, terrible place to be. And I apologize if anything that I did made you feel that way. But when I went through that whole list of explanation of spending and spending and spending, my point was to show that we need to be fair and even-handed. And we all pay our taxes, but each neighborhood has different needs. In the last 6 months, the priority for spending for amenities has been met in spades. And that was my point there. And you also spoke about needing a payback of sorts on the quiet zone. And I would ask you to consider a more pleasant downtown and a safer downtown as paybacks. Several members expressed concern that they didn't want to be bound to an agreement with Douglas County as pertains to a letter of inquiry. And we simply want to ask the commissioners if they're open or have an interest in discussing the issue. And I trust that they're capable of deciding whether it's a waste of their time or not. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And at that point, neither party's locked into an obligation. It's just a letter of inquiry. As to previous councils not acting on the quiet zone, it wasn't due to a lack of merit or because it was too difficult. It was because the funding wasn't there. Councilman Teal, I'm curious as to the quiet zone survey that you said you conducted in your neighborhood. Was this a survey that went out to all the homes in your district, or was it a survey on the social media site with limited participation? And I wondered how many were surveyed, because you've mentioned it several times. And just my cautionary advice is that you present all the votes in the survey, that you list the names of all the participants, and you don't just present the results that support your point of view. You run the risk of being linked to the Soviet communists and German Nazis. And I know because it happened to me, and I even listed my sources. And Mr. Mayor, I'm curious as to what survey you were speaking of when you said residents said they didn't want the quiet zone. I pulled out the 184-page 2015 Castle Rock Community Survey, and I couldn't even find a mention of the quiet zone at all. We've more than met the town's priority for spending. In the last 6 months, $2.58 million plus the $5 million Festival Park. We need to remember the other priorities mentioned in the budget statement. And the very first one, the number one priority says, provide for outstanding public health and safety.
30 seconds left.
All right, Councilman Wilson, you're not off the hook. Speaking of fairness and even-handedness, did you or why didn't you conduct a survey in your district to see how the residents felt about spending projects in different areas of town? Like, say, the Wolfensberger pedestrian bridge? That last question is kind of rhetorical, but your answer might be interesting.
Your 4 minutes are up, Ms. Dorsey.
End of my housekeeping. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, I have Andrew Dunkley.
Good evening, Council, and good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Andrew Dunkley. I am a resident, but I'm here tonight on behalf of Senator Cory Gardner at the behest of Mayor Pro Tem Green, so I thank you for inviting me. I wanted to, I guess, first off, read the press release from our office dated March 4th, 2016. This is in reference to the FRA announcing that there will be public comment on their train horn rule. This has nothing to do with your decision as a town to either enact it or debate it from there. Let me read this. It's entitled, Gardner Announces Train Horn Rule Public Comment Period. Washington, D.C. Senator Cory Gardner today announced the Federal Railroad Administration, FRA, is reopening the train horn rule for public comment. The public comment period will last for 120 days before the FRA will make a final decision on whether to change the existing rule. The current train horn rule, which went into effect in 2005, has had significant impacts on communities along Colorado's Front Range. Gardner sent a letter to FRA Administrator Sarah Feinberg on December 11, 2016, expressing disappointment the agency denied a quiet zone waiver for Fort Collins and asked the FRA to reopen the train horn rule. He followed up with a letter on December 18, 2016, asking the administrator to meet with Front Range communities that have been negatively impacted by this rule. Last year, when Congress passed a long-term authorization of surface transportation programs with the FAST Act, Senator Gardner included an amendment requiring the Government Accountability Office to conduct an independent review of the train horn rule. I am pleased, and this is a quote from Senator Gardner, I am pleased the Federal Railroad Administration is reopening the train horn rule for public comment, which allows local Colorado communities all up and down the Front Range to play a role in this process. The current rule is not effectively serving Front Range communities with rail lines running through their city centers, and I am committed to seeing a final rule that continues to prioritize safety while also acknowledging the needs of individual communities. And I also wanted to read that's the end of the release. I also wanted to read a quote from the spokeswoman of the FRA regarding the public comment. The FRA wants to hear from those with vested interests in establishing quiet zones on how to modify, streamline, or expand its regulations for when horns must be sounded when trains cross public roads. So I wanted to come and let you know that we're continuing to fight the FRA, or not necessarily fight the FRA, but to work with the FRA regarding quiet zones, and then leave the decision up to you. So, and that's all up and down the Front Range. As you know, you were granted quiet zone approval. Fort Collins was not. So, if there was anything left out of the release about Castle Rock, that's the reason for that. So, thank you very much, and I appreciate the time. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Dunkley.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like to address council on this issue? And seeing none, we'll close the public comment. We'll bring it back to council for action.
I got a question if I could, Paul. Hey, Bob, one of the options that you threw up there was to just do a 4-quadrant gate at Second, no improvements to Third.
That's correct. We would use the 4-quad gate at 2nd Street, and then minor modifications at 5th, and that meets the risk assessment requirement to reduce the risk sufficiently to meet the standards of the Railroad Administration.
And then the FRA, per your graph, showed that it would have to come out and review potentially every 2 to 3 years just to make sure that the safety measures are still sufficient to retain a quiet zone.
Yes, that the risk index is still at the level they need it to be.
So we could ultimately keep all 3 crossings open and do it for half the cost, just to pretty much one end, and potentially put in a quiet zone.
Yes, that's correct.
It's awesome. It's great. It's nice to hear there's more and more options that are kind of being churned up. So thank you.
Councilman Teal?
I did want to answer the direct questions that came from Ms. Dozweiler. You know, Ann, it's been very nice having you present at these meetings. It's really been very interesting to hear your input, and I know you've caused me to think of, you see things in different manner with some of your inquisitions, despite our meeting when I basically compared you to the Nazis and the communists, which we'll talk about whether that was earned or not. To answer your question, ma'am, on October 30th, I did launch a poll on the social network site of, oh heck, what's this called? Yeah, please hold. I can't remember what this thing is called. It's the one that we were asked to check out by one of the clergy here in the Craig and Gould area. So I did. And I launched this poll. It was inclusive of the neighborhoods of Crystal Valley Ranch, Kings Ridge, Plum Creek, to include the Plum Creek Peninsula neighborhood. I did exclude the neighborhood of Bell Mountain Ranch, because Bell Mountain Ranch is unincorporated Douglas County, and therefore, I thought this was a decision we should make as a town. The results of the poll, there were 58 participants. That's really it. Of the over 300 individuals that are a part of the social networking application in that area, only 58 responded. And of that response, the questions were, should we have a quiet zone? Answer was yes. The train horns are disruptive and bad for the town. That was 17%. Another response was not for $1 million. It's not worth $1 million, but I would say yes, it was much less expensive. And 17% of the respondents responded to that. And then the other answer was, no, the trains have been here since the town was founded. If you don't like them, you shouldn't have moved here. And I fully realize, boy, that sounds shocking coming from a member of town council. But guys, these are comments we've seen on this subject from folks who aren't members of town council. So I included that. And that was 66% of respondents responded to that one. Obviously, it's hard to call that a scientific poll. Personally, my judgment has not been based on that poll nearly as much as the conversations I have with my residents. The people I meet walking to the mailbox, the people I have lunch with, the people who hit me up on other subjects and complain to me about Mr. Marlowe's water bill that he sends to all of us in the mail every month. I've been trying to solicit this input from my residents. That's where any decisions I've been making have been coming from. In the meantime, I actually thought it was a great conversation. I'm glad we went through it. If anybody feels bumped and bruised, particularly from any comments made by me, I apologize. I mean, I really didn't mean for that to occur. But I did want us to have an honest conversation. I thought this was a so much better topic to discuss as a town than the one we were experiencing this time last year regarding the nice developers at the promenade and folks who wish to get in their way. So, my position hasn't changed since our last meeting on this subject. I'm at this time unwilling to commit any kind of funds. I suppose when we look at all the options that Bob was kind enough to lay before us today, I gotta tell you, if the residents of Craig and Gould and the downtown area get together, draw lines on a map, and bring forward a petition signed by 2/3 of the members of that area, I'm 100% behind you. If you guys decide that this is that important that you're willing to tax yourselves, and I know I'm supposed to be the anti-tax guy, I'll support you. I'll support you. I'll go down to Dr. Cog off Broadway. I'll see how much money I can steal out of Boulder on the next tip. You bet. Other than that, I'm not sure I'm willing to support any funding at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Teal. Any other comments? Councilman Wilson?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having the information on your survey that you took. I don't have it on my iPad, but I was looking for the survey that we did on the Wolfensberger pedestrian bridge. And I say it rather tongue-in-cheek, because I know there wasn't one. There was a proposal brought forth by Parks and Rec that they wanted to link Ridgeline Open Space and the Philip S. Miller Park. And I know Annie asked the last question, rather rhetorical, but there was no survey. So, yeah, we spent $750,000 or just about that much to put in a pedestrian bridge. Nice to have. It's great. It's going to be beautiful. If you've seen it, by the way, it's already stretched across the street. I can appreciate your position, George, to say that you haven't budged. I love the fact that staff has gone back time after time after time after time after time after time after time to look at this issue and see what could be done to increase the quality of life for the folks in the center of our town. I don't think that the taxing district is an option, and I'm going to say why. It wouldn't just benefit the people in Craig and Gould. I, for one, don't live in Craig and Gould. I live to the east of Craig and Gould, and the train horn is actually very loud at my house. I was actually asking for one of the noise meters to be at my house because I live up the hill, and unfortunately sound goes right on up the hill and it's even louder. So I don't live in Craig and Gould. I definitely want to participate if Craig and Gould was going to be get taxed. We'll get back to that. Downtown. The downtown business owners over the years that Paul and I have sat on this dais have struggled with the economic downturn that we faced in '08 when we first took the oath of office. And to their credit, the majority of them have hung on and done an incredible job. And in '08, they decided to tax themselves already. And they created the Downtown Development Authority and the tax increment financing instrument that's used to do the extra stuff, to do the neat stuff, and to enhance and increase property values downtown. I don't think I would be, of course I don't really represent the downtown businesses anymore, even though it's in my district, but I don't think I'd be very popular if I went into a downtown business and said, hey, I'd like to tax you a little bit more to put in a quiet zone. The folks just north of us got a quiet zone, and they had a partnership, three-way partnership, Castle Pines, Douglas County, and they silenced the train horn from just north of us all the way up into Sedalia. I don't know about you guys, but that was actually some money that I put into Douglas County taxes, and they used that money to fund it. So I actually take a little bit of an offense that it keeps getting brought up as an issue to maybe the downtown area or the Craig and Gould folks could tax themselves to fund it. I think that's a really crappy way to look at a situation to say there's a potential funding stream for you. Mr. Goebel was nice enough to bring us 6 options that he sat up there, one of which was to ask for a partnership for the Douglas County Commissioners. I'd like to, again, make a motion to send a letter requesting participation and funding yet to be determined with the Douglas County Commissioners to create a downtown quiet zone in Castle Rock. That's a motion, by the way. It requires a second. Not even a second to vote it down? The other thing is I'd like to thank staff for taking a project that on the initial onset was at $2.2 million, 1.8 to 2.2 million bucks. We came out with multiple different solutions, and then ultimately through our improving Fifth Street, we realized we didn't have to enhance Fifth Street anymore, so the price came down dramatically. When you take a look at now yet another possibility, is we could cut the estimated $800,000 to $850,000 in half, make it $400,000 to $425,000, do our enhancements at 2nd Street with a 4-quad gate, which would enhance safety for the newly established $5 million festival park, which I think we're gonna need because it's gonna be such a draw. That, I think, actually meets with one of your survey questions. It says not for $1 million, but if the cost was dramatically decreased, they would be in favor of it. I'd be in favor of it. $425,000. Let's see. I can enhance the safety. I can increase the betterment and quality of life for all people in the area, not just Craig and Gould residents, but downtown businesses, Castle North, the people in Plum Creek, the people that are north of or east of Craig and Gould. There's a ton of people that come downtown that are, I don't know, a little gun shy when they're sitting out on the patio having a train horn go through. Guys, I, for one, I'm blown away that I can't even get a second for you to vote down a request to partner with the Douglas County Commissioners. I'd love you to go to DRCOG as our representative, Councilmember Teal, and say, hey guys, I'd like to see about getting some funding for a downtown quiet zone for a train. I don't think that's an odd request. I think that's appropriate. You're our representative, and you represent all of Castle Rock when you go to DRCOG's meeting, not just District 6. I am absolutely blown away at how many years this has gone on and yet there's been no resolution, no compromise, yet we've asked staff to do this over and over again. To Mr. Decker's point, I think that is dramatic lip service, and quite frankly, I'm rather disgusted. I'd like to see this quiet zone done. We weren't willing to close 2nd Street, which was a $10,000 option, but it would have inconvenienced so many people from your district, from your district, from your district, and your districts. Well, not so much the Meadows, but truly from mine. That was good. That was a compromise. I wasn't in favor of that either. As bad as I wanted a downtown quiet zone, I wasn't willing to do it either. Hell, I'm half tempted to write a $10,000 check myself to say, you know what, go close 2nd Street and put the damn quiet zone in. Can't do it. It would have inconvenienced too many people. Unfortunately, my pockets aren't deep enough to do 425, because I'd love to go ahead and suggest to make a motion. Let's make the motion of closing 4 quad gates at 2nd Street, $425,000. Let's just go ahead and spend town funds and get the damn thing done. But I know I won't get a second for that either. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments regarding this? Mayor Pro Tem Green?
I think Andrew has left, but I wanted to thank Andrew for coming from Senator Cory Gardner's office today. He did mention that the FRA has reopened a public comment period. I think it goes through July, the July timeframe of this year. So if anyone is interested in commenting on that, he did send me the link. I'd be happy to share it, and I think it's great for him to challenge the FRA and have them look at some of their policies. It is an organization that's more of a red tape bureaucratic organization, and any feedback, I think, for them to receive is important. So if anyone would like that link, I have it. I'd be happy to send it to you.
Can we go ahead and put that on
Mayor
the town's
Pro Tem.
website, under the train stuff? Can we just go ahead and put it on the town's website, Jen? Dave, can we do that?
Yes, we can put the link that
Thank you.
the Mayor Pro Tem was talking about. We put it on a website so that people can find that information.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? No? I do want to address a question that Ms. Dorsweiler presented to me, and it was in regards where she indicated that I said, and I don't remember the exact quote, about nobody wanting it or the quiet zone. As I recall, what I was referring to as a community survey, and I don't know what year it came in. I think we've done at least 2 or 3 since I've been on here. But the quiet zone has shown up as the lowest priority on those community surveys whenever they've been rolled out. So when we look at from a community perspective, from a residential perspective, obviously there isn't near the drive from residents to want to have the quiet zone. It's council's determination as to which are the priorities in town. And I know that we've brought up some of the bridge. There's been the Christmas lights. There have been, I'm not sure what other ones have been brought up. But yeah, council has selected the priorities where they want to spend the money, where they think they can have the most good, and where we get positive feedback from the residents who have talked to us about that. Now, I know there are individuals who would like to have us spend that money in another way, and of course, they don't like those priorities, and that they don't want. And one thing I've learned in this job is no matter what you do, you're not going to make everyone happy. But when I look at the funding options, and I think it was Councilman Wilson that brought this up, there is an entity in town that did vote to tax themselves in order to look at projects for the betterment of the downtown area. And that's the DDA. And those individuals, for the most part, they have businesses downtown. They own property downtown. So I would think that they would be highly qualified in order to make a determination if the quiet zone made sense or not. So my thought process is, once the DDA, once these individuals make it a priority for themselves to move forward, they have a funding mechanism in place to make it happen. And with the development downtown, with the $4 million that we're looking at spending on the development of Festival Park, that is a catalyst to enhance more development downtown. We have got some projects coming down the Bookstead down in the downtown area that are going to be in excess of $50 to $70 million. If these projects come through, if these projects occur, and it looks like they're going to be occurring around the Festival Park area, and they're occurring because of that investment that council has made in Festival Park, or that's one of the drivers behind it. So we're seeing right offhand the return of investment on that particular investment of taxpayer funds. And when we look at these projects moving forward, if they move forward, the TIF generated by these projects should be enough within, and I hate to even say, how many years, but a very short number of years, that the revenue could be available to fund this quiet zone. It would be funded by the DDA, it would be funded by downtown TIF, and it would be funded when the DDA decided that it was a priority for them. So from my perspective, I think that would be the appropriate way to move forward. I talked about the fact that the rest of the community hasn't been as behind this as I think some people may have hoped. But I think it would be appropriate for that particular organization to be the initiator of this particular project. One of the reasons, and Councilman Wilson, of course, made a motion to bring something forward to the county. One of the reasons why I did not second that motion is we have nothing to present to the county. We haven't even decided as a council if we want to move forward on the project. How can we ask the county if they'll move forward on the project when we haven't even decided to do that? So that's one of the reasons why I didn't think it was appropriate to second that motion, and I needed to put that out there as well. So just wanted to kind of give my feedback on it, and like I said, I think the appropriate funding mechanism should be the DDA.
Well, on that note, if I might.
Councilman Wilson?
Unless I missed my guess, I don't think the DDA was elected to represent the entire population of this town. I don't think so. It's a small
That's not
sampling.
what they told me.
I'm sorry. It's a small sampling of business owners and property owners in the downtown area, and it has a town council representative. So for you to make a statement to say, until the DDA decides that this is a priority, I think is somewhat disingenuous. The seven of us were put up here by our districts to represent the town, and more importantly, our specific districts. But again, acting as a whole to represent the best interest of the entire town. And I can tell you over the last 8 years, I voted on some stuff that by no means way or no way how reflected my personal opinion, but it was the betterment for the town, and it got approved with a yes vote. Or it was something that got voted down, even though it was something that I wanted. Personal, because it was in the best interest of the town. So again, I took a little bit of offense with saying that until the DDA decides that it's a priority, I think is kind of a lousy way to put that, Paul, and I'm sorry to say it that way. People that have been asking and begging for this for over a decade. I mean, the council member that was in my seat before me, he brought it to, and that's where it started and got its initial traction and initial cost. And now we're talking about something that's a fifth of what the estimated cost was back then. And we're going to sit on our hands and do nothing and not even ask county commissioners just because we don't have anything to ask them. We have something to ask them. Hey guys, you want to partner with us like you partnered with Castle Pines? How about something as informal as that? God bless. This needs to get done, and it doesn't just help one district or one neighborhood, and that one neighborhood shouldn't pay for it. That's like saying that people that moved into Crystal Valley Ranch, they don't have a fire station. Maybe they should tax themselves to put a fire station because when they moved in, they didn't have one. That's not. That's our obligation as a representative of this town to go ahead and put those safety measures in place for that district.
Any other comments? Question, Councilman Ford?
Thanks, Paul. Just trying to digest a lot of the quiet zone as well, and this has been an issue since I've been on council. And I find an interesting inverse relationship, though, between the residents who live closest to it, the ones in the middle is the DDA who are businesses downtown, and the ones that are furthest from it are my district and other people who are away from it. But yet the funding source isn't coming from the people who are most directly impacted asking. It's the people who are closest that are asking for somebody else, for everybody else to come in and pay. So I see an inverse relationship there. One of the things that I look at with the DDA, and this is my feeling on it, is I know we've got residents who live close to it. We've got special districts all over the town, whether they're water districts, sewer districts, a lot of different places that are created to solve a certain issue, something that's specific to that area. What I look at is that with the DDA, if the DDA came and said, hey, this is our priority, this is stopping development, these are some of the things that we need to do. But I see what the DDA continues to say, and talking to Frank Gray and economic development being part of that there are other priorities that are coming before that. And I'm not saying that it's not important, but I think that when you look at the priority of the things that we're talking about, that one hasn't risen from the people who are downtown, who are taxing themselves and saying that's the next thing that we need to tackle. And so I look at that area. I do believe that the DDA does represent the development of downtown and the community as a whole. One of the things that I hold off on requesting from the county to be able to ask them for funding and asking them if they're going to split it is because I don't want to say, hey, are you going to do this? And they say yes, and I'm not committed that I'm going to do it myself. I'm not going to ask somebody else that question and then turn around and say, oh, now I haven't even decided that myself. So I think until we've got to that point as a council, I don't want to go ask the district. I don't want to go ask the county just to get their opinion, just to see until I've decided that I'm willing to do my half, or as the council's willing to do their half. I know that there's a feeling of every time we do this, we keep kicking it down the road, and I don't believe that that's intentional, but I believe that's because when I've looked at it, the answer's been no. So if we don't want a hard no, then we continue to look for additional options, including the one that has recently come out from Senator Gardner's office about opening up the FRA again for public comment. If we want to just stop kicking the can down the road, then we can just say no right now and then be done with it and not continue to explore. Because these meetings aren't fun for me either, to continue to get lectured and everything else on all the reasons why I'm making a bad decision. Two people can come to the same thing and have a different opinion on it. And that's my feeling is that I'm looking at it and I have a different opinion. People don't have to agree with the same way that I see it, but this is the way I see it. And so if we want to just stop the conversation, feel like we're kicking it down the road, I'm okay then just to say no and be done, and we can start talking about other town business if we want to stop the conversation of kicking it down the road. But I look for guidance from the DDA and from others who are also involved downtown, who also have a voice. I know that the people in District 7, in my district, and others say, hey, you know what, I think the train's unique. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not seeing that same issue that people are saying that it's this issue. So I really do see it as a local issue, because the people in my district are saying, hey, the train's beautiful, it's awesome, that's what makes Castle Rock unique. They don't come down here and walk across the tracks. They don't sit here and listen to the train. I know that I was at Siena on Monday and the train went through, and I don't think we even stopped our conversation. It wasn't an issue where people are saying, please spend the money. So I'm looking at it from that standpoint. If we want to stop the conversation, then we can do that as well. But thank you for the time, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Councilman Wilson.
And Brett, I appreciate that. sitting in the DDA meeting where this actually came up as a conversation, we were talking about closing Second Street. So it was prior to the final vote that we took not to use that option. Mr. Corliss was actually in attendance that day as well. In that meeting, numerous members of the DDA, voting members of the DDA, said that they were not in favor of closing Second Street as an option to get a quiet zone, but they were in favor of a quiet zone at a different option, some other option, some other way. I actually made a request that afternoon to ask for a transcript of the meeting minutes for that meeting, because they're recorded. Ironically, we got the letter from the DDA that said they were not in favor of closing Second Street. Hell, I think we can pretty much ascertain that nobody was really in favor of closing Second Street as an option for a downtown quiet zone. But I will tell you that the majority members of the voting board of the DDA were in favor of a quiet zone some other way. So I'll just put that out there for what that's worth. As far as, and again, this council has gotten so divisive over the years. I can't believe some of the wedges that have been driven. I'm going to use North Meadows as an example of something. It's an ultimate project at what, $63 million? Oh, I'm sorry, $83 million? That the town is encumbered with quite a bit of that debt, is my understanding. Ironically, as somebody who commutes back and forth to work in Denver, does it help me? Well, maybe it kind of eases a little bit of the congestion off exit 184. But ultimately, I'm spending an awful lot of Castle Rock taxpayer money for the North Meadows interchange, okay? Castle Rock Parkway. Initially, when it was proposed, it was just for ingress and egress for the Meadows. Not a one of us that sat up here said, well, just the Meadows should pay for that and have them have an opportunity to get out onto Highway 85. And I'll check my records because there might have been one council member, but it wasn't me. Nobody said up here that, no, the Meadows ought to fend for themselves and do it on their own. It wasn't something that affected me. I don't go to the Meadows. I live downtown. I live near downtown. I live south of town. Plum Creek Parkway. When we did the interchange down here, again, that was something that was voted on. Taxpayer money was going to be spent on that. Who did it benefit? The Meadows could have turned right around and said the same damn thing. That doesn't help me one iota. I'm not spending any of my money on that. Let them get their own taxing increment and do their own damn interchange. But they didn't. It blows me away that I think I've said enough. I'd still like to see if there's interest and garner interest from the commissioners. Maybe somebody from our resident population that is actually a member of the Douglas County community would like to go to a Douglas County commissioner meeting and sit in front of them and say, hey, listen, we've heard it said that there's a councilman that's interested, so not an official Castle Rock position, but maybe the Douglas County commissioners would like to partner with the town. I mean, because there's this councilman that can't even get a second to any of his motions. That's a little ridiculous. You got to at least second it. Then you can vote it down.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other conversation? Any other comments in regard to this? Any movement forward?
I almost wish I had seconded it so I could call the question at this stage of the game. I think it's appropriate to move forward, Mr. Mayor.
What do you guys think of the thought process with the DDA in terms of having the DDA give us an indication of when they could fund it? We'll get Councilmember Valentine.
As far as that goes, the majority of people, and we've always said, Chip, it's not that it doesn't need to be done. I think it is going to get done in the next several years. We just have some other projects that need to be done first to be able to fund it. That's it. It comes down to dollars and cents for the DDA board. You know that. I mean, and I'm happy to sit down with you and we can talk about what projects we've got working. You know, that is where they are. We know it's on the agenda. It's just not there yet. It just has not risen to the top. But I think that is probably the group that needs to take a stand on that.
Yeah, if I can say, just want to say just a couple of things as well in regard to that. There were a couple of projects that were brought up, including Castle Rock Parkway, including Plum Creek Parkway, including funds being used to that. From my perspective, the difference between those projects, Chip, is that those projects are actually generating revenue to help pay for public safety, for infrastructure, for water. So it was integral to have Castle Rock Parkway in there, or else if we didn't have it, the promenade would not be there. If we didn't have Plum Creek Parkway coming around to Coach Line, Philip S. Miller Park wouldn't be there. The MAC wouldn't be there. So council does need to look at how the money's spent, and we do prioritize on it. And I know that this may be kind of difficult to hear, but one of the things about the quiet zone that I hear when we talked with Chief Cawley, we talked with Chief Morales, is when we talk about safety, from their perspective, there isn't a safety issue. When we talk about economic development, we see incredible economic development happening downtown. And we don't see any of these individuals asking for a quiet zone. We don't see them saying, oh, I'm not going to develop downtown because of the quiet zone. And the third part of that is, I look at the value of the homes down there, because you think that there might be just a significant decrease in the value of the homes. And, I see some of those homes selling for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 down there. It doesn't seem to be impacting the value of the homes either. So when I look at those three reasons, but behind it, I'm just not able to make it a priority. And one of the cool things about this council is it's a weak mayor form of government that we have here in Castle Rock, which means that each of us can move forward an agenda, but we need to be able to get at least 3 other council people to join on with them. If an individual is not able to get 3 other council members to join on, it's probably important to look at the reasoning and the rationale that's being used to try to convince other council members. I know when I was working on the Christmas lights, yeah, it was some pretty significant money, but I talked with other council members. I sat down with them individually, talked about the benefits of it, the benefits to the town, and we were able to convince them that, hey, it was a good idea, and we were able to implement it. And I think that would be incumbent on anyone who has a issue that they want to move forward. I don't think that saying my ideas are lousy or my reasoning is lousy or using that type of logic is going to help. And I'm just letting you know, I think we're all rational, reasonable people up here. We're all looking at this issue. We all see value to these type of projects in the community, and this one isn't reaching priority status, again, for this council, but we're trying to look at ways forward, and ridiculing our positions probably isn't going to help. So, I'm looking at a possible way forward with the DDA. I think that would be the logical way to make it happen, and that's the way that I'll be standing tonight. Councilman Teal?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, actually, I'd be fine if the DDA was able to get behind this. The prices are getting to a point, like Chip, you were saying, the price is coming down. I'd be fine if the DDA could take it on over time. Just like to remind everyone, Plum Creek Parkway was expanded through a vote to not get the Tabor surplus, but a vote of the whole town to spend our Tabor surplus on the development of that road, with the ring road concept, tying into Founders, eventually swinging across the meadows, like we see it now. So let's just bear in mind, some of these big projects we've been throwing around as being wastes of money, and it didn't benefit anybody. Well, at least Plum Creek Parkway, that was a vote the whole town did. And it was a whole vote the whole town did to say, no, we don't want, if I want to say, it was like $12 million of a Tabor refund, which if you divide that up by the, I think it was 40,000 population that was here in about 2004, 2005, gee guys, that's a washer and dryer set. People gave up a good chunk of change instead of coming in the mail to get the ring road of Plum Creek Parkway. So, and I think it's illustrative because that's kind of a town-wide priority there. So, again, I almost wish I would have seconded so we could call the question and move along. But yes, Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, if the DDA came back to us over the coming years, when Brett and I are perhaps still up here, I'd be more than happy to hear that plan.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson?
There were TAP bonds, and I was using them just to be somewhat facetious, to say that, if we're using that mindset, as if it doesn't benefit me, I'm not voting for it. I was using it in that context, George. It still kind of blows me away that after 8 years, 2 years on a DAC, Downtown Advisory Commission, and 8 years at the DIAS, that this project hasn't gotten, I won't even say traction, it hasn't even gotten any ears for people up here. And that's a little disturbing. And when you talk about, survey, there was a survey done, Paul, and you referenced it, and the Downtown Railroad, the quiet zone, was actually on the survey. And it was number 5 out of 5. But at least it was part and parcel of a survey to say, hey, out of these 5 things, how would you rank them? And I'd love to go find it. And I think it was around 2010, 2011 time frame. Out of these 5 things, where would you rank them? And the quiet zone was number 5. And I'll give you that. But at least it was on a survey. I don't remember seeing anything about connecting Ridgeline Open Space and Philip S. Miller Park with a bridge when people can cross at a 4-way stop sign or a traffic signal that's going to be there, and it would be as safe. I don't remember any survey for that. So I definitely see where this issue stands with the other members of council. I appreciate you putting forward to say if the DDA can get behind it. I'm going to put Mr. Corliss on the spot for a second and say, while you were at that meeting, you actually heard the DDA board members state that they were in favor of having a quiet zone, but at a different option than closing 2nd Street. Would you like it in letter form? Maybe I'll make a motion to ask the DDA representative from council to go to the DDA board and solicit a letter from them saying that they'd be interested in looking into how to establish a quiet zone in downtown Castle Rock. That was a motion.
Well, it probably would be more honest, if that's really the case, than what we've been told by the DDA.
No.
Because the DDA isn't telling us that.
George, what I referred to is that, I want a Porsche. All right, so wanting something isn't the same as making it a priority and funding it. And that's what I'm talking about with the DDA. When they're ready to make it a priority, and when the development is such that the TIF is generated, that they can fund it, then I think that would be the appropriate time to move forward. Any other comments?
There's a motion on
Looking for a second? Don't see any second.